All right, today's pretty exciting. I have Michael Amorosia from the Amorosia Cellar, which is one of the fastest growing Instagram pages online. He is building this page around the idea of this show. So his thesis is the following. This is from his writing. The next generation is not failing wine, wine is failing the room. So his argument is that most of wine content is just a test. So there's credentialing and performance and vocabulary and performance. And he's trying to replace that with the idea that you have a bottle at the table and that you pour wine and that opens your night. So the through line here, and the reason why I find this to be a little bit special, is that Michael was the lead singer of Reactions, which was a Phoenix post-hardcore band whose entire identity was a faceless movement. So they performed with their faces covered, so everybody would react to the music and not the image. And now he's doing kind of the same thing, but this time using his face. And so this is my discussion with Michael Amorosia. Well, Michael, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time out to talk a little bit about what's going on with you and your channel and your life.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so obviously, kind of the thrust of what we're going to talk about has to do with younger people. But one thing that is kind of a commonality that I've noticed with a lot of wine people is there's something about musicians. So you have that background too. So let's talk a little bit about music and use that as kind of a jumping off point to how you
Sure.
got into wine, if we can.
Yeah, definitely. So music has always been huge in my family, right? My mom was a writer and like for children's musicals, and my dad, that's how they met, right? My dad was a piano major. He helped composition. So I was grown up. I grew up in a very musical household. When I was in high school, I started a band. And we had a couple variations of the band, right? But
Yeah.
it ended up lasting for quite some time, and it got to a point where we were touring um, consistently 6 to 9 months out of the year, and it's just exploring as I was growing up a little bit, and it was a really good way of letting me see the United States and travel around and just kind of explore that. And it feels like a whole different life. But yeah, I always enjoyed it, and just the artistic ability. I've always been a little bit on the artsy side, so I think that's where it kind of ties in altogether.
Yeah, and so, one of the things that I found like super interesting about the background is that you were really using your band kind of in an artistic way. Your channel is obviously extremely artistic, but let's kind of talk about the message here. This no scores, no filler, substance over image. How did that apply kind of to your music life, and now how is that applying to your channel and everything that you're doing in the wine world?
Sure. So, my band Reactions at the time, one of our big things is that we wanted the music to speak for itself, right? And that was the our biggest message. And we had a whole campaign and where we just didn't show our faces whatsoever, and we just wanted the music and the substance to speak for itself. We didn't need any additional imaging or like at that time too, it was very much like the Justin Biebers and like the pretty ones are where, and we just wanted to make sure that okay, we're making great music, so we want to make sure that it's heard, not just because one of our band members is good looking or something like that, right? And so
By the way, so this is both on video on YouTube, but for everyone who's just like listening, he's a handsome man, so you can check that out on the channel. But I understand. So hiding the face was part of the artistic
yeah,
moment.
and
Yeah.
it kind of transfers over to wine now, and I think it's just really transferred over into my whole entire ethos. Is just like I want wine to speak for itself, and it really the whole point is to make people react to the substance or the work, right? And I want that to shine through wine, and I think that's partly what the next generation wants as well. They want the story, and they don't need the fancy imaging, and like they don't need the fancy. We just want to show the work that in the wine, right? That's the biggest push.
So let's talk about wine for a minute because obviously you have proven kind of with the content and the following that you're pretty good at the wine. But how did the wine thing start for you? What was your moment? Did you grow up with it or did it come later?
No, what's funny is I wasn't into wine like at all. My wife was, and we had a COVID wedding, so it was 2020. We were supposed to go to a few different places uh, for our honeymoon, right? And so obviously that didn't end up happening because of COVID, and we our friends wanted to take us to Napa. As like, okay, we can go to Napa if we're careful, right? And so they finally took us almost a year and a half later after our wedding. And, I was a whiskey guy. So I was like, I had to go to I knew a couple spots, like the stuff that you can get at the grocery store. But they were like, let me take you to some of these like special spots. And they took us to one spot in particular, and it's called Kiever Winery in Napa. And I found this out later, but Celia Welsh is the winemaker, and it's very like small. And I just fell in love. I know the exact vintage. My wife and I didn't know that wine could taste like that, right? And I tend to, same with music, right? I tend to get obsessed. And so I just went down that rabbit hole and fell in love with it. And, I think there's a clear tie between artistry and wine. So I like the artistic aspect of wine and how different vineyards can taste totally different, or how the same vineyard can taste totally different through different winemakers, through packaging. I just fell in love with. I found that tie between art and wine, and that's where I fell in love. It was a 2016 Kiever Cabernet. So
It's funny. So there's like a marker wine bottle for you. What's funny to me is that I did the same thing. So I was the whiskey guy, and then we started going to Napa, and those
mhm.
trips like seem to impact a lot. You do travel a lot.
I do.
Talk a
Yeah.
little bit, yeah, talk a little bit about how wine intersects with your travel.
So honestly, since that trip, we really and my wife and I dove into wine a lot more, and we do focus quite a few of our trips around wine. Um, like we just went to Europe with a brand called Memento Mori. We got to travel all around, which was really fun, really cool. But it's really focused on. A lot of our trips are focused on food and wine, right? And I think that's where we find the most enjoyment is, and where we can connect, right? The most is just finding those special spots along the way and those special wineries, like stumbling in, finding a wine that we've never heard of, like trying it. I think that's where we make the most memories. And so, yeah, we now it's just developed into a lot of different things. We go to Napa all the time, going to Paso this weekend. Like we like to travel all around. We just went to Willamette in May for the first time. So, but yeah, it's really wine. A lot of our trips are wine focused and finding new, interesting places.
So let's talk a little bit about what you're developing on your channel and kind of the idea that you do have beautiful photography. You do have yourself in this case with the mask off, you know, preaching your message. What are the kind of key things for you as you're thinking about developing content and connecting with younger people? What are the key things that kind of make it work on your end?
So I think the biggest key for me is that these are truly how I feel or felt um, getting into wine, right? Is I know there's been a lot of wine dinners that I've been to where, we're the youngest couple in the room. I just spoke on a couple days ago that we were sitting in a master class together, and people, and you know, we were right there, and they were talking about our palate where we didn't have one, right? And so I've felt this whole, one of the big things is getting, I don't want people to experience that. It would be hard to explore wine if you're feeling that way. And feeling in these rooms, you're feeling like you're less than. And so I think big thing for me is to make that room a little bit more inviting. And and for my case, I'm just translating what I like, um, and what I think other people might like into my content, right? So, as you can see in most of my content, I go to the wineries and my streetwear and my baseball hat, and like kind of push the boundaries. And I like hip hop music and I like EDM music, and I want to push it there and like show that this can you can we can do both, right? We can do it, can be inviting. You can answer the questions without having judgment. You can, I feel like there's a there doesn't need to be any of this prestige or like this pretentiousness into wine. We need to kind of tone that back and show how cool it can be.
Yeah, it is interesting too, especially on your channel, how those kind of couple things meld together, but they also clash a little bit, right? So let's talk about that. So you have this amazing um, lifestyle, kind of an aspirational aspect to wine, which is part of the reason why people get into it. It's kind of takes you away, it elevates your life. And on the other hand, you have this feeling that you're lesser than, or that you don't know enough to be in the room. And so for you, what is kind of that balance between those kind of two maybe competing ideas, or do they meld together in your mind?
They do meld a little bit, right? I think there is it is interesting, right? It's like I wine does take me to all these places, and I drink very high level wine as well. So, but I think there's a way to go about it where it doesn't have to be. That's where the melding comes in, right? Is I think it doesn't have to be. I don't have to wear a tux or have a white tablecloth to enjoy this wine, right? I could drink it with pizza. I could have McDonald's. It doesn't matter, right? Like, or I think I just said it in a video recently. It's like it could be a random Tuesday. It doesn't have to be a special occasion, right? It's just the occasion is when you want to drink it, right? And with the people that you want to drink it with, and the place that you want to drink it, right? So I think that's yes. I think there's a melding in my brain where it's like you can have both. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be one lane or the other. And I think that's where, especially in California wine and American wine, I think that's where there's a clear line where we went across it, right? It's we went to wine has to be elite, and it has to be we're this next level specialty thing where it's not usually the case in internationally, right? It's just part
Yeah.
of the culture. I just wrote about this the other day. As we sat down and we were in Dubrovnik, and we sat down at a restaurant, very nice restaurant, and without asking or anything, they just poured a white wine. Right? It was just almost like water, and it was like that's so cool, right? And there was refills. It was just flowing, right? So, and I think like that just shows how much wine is part of the culture, and I feel like that's my vision. I just want it to be like so ingrained in the culture of like the United States, and yeah, I just want it to be more ingrained in the culture, right? It can
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah, in the because this is like a kind of relatively large international audience, I kind of want to put a point on this just so everybody has a little context. In Europe, you walk into a store, and oftentimes the bottle of bottled water or whatever's 3 or 4 euro, and the wine is 2 or 3 euro. So there is a different kind of price structure. In the US, that just doesn't exist. You walk
Mm.
into a grocery store and it's 16, 18, $20 just to get any bottle of wine. And so what you're describing is truly kind of an American phenomenon. And so I'm going to turn the question around to you. What are you seeing as far as the people who are following you? Are you really appealing more to the American audience, or do you have an international following?
I would say majority is American.
Yeah.
So I know my top two demographics are New York and Napa, but I do have a percentage of my biggest one is Seoul, Korea.
Really?
Which is interesting to me. So
Yeah.
there's a big wine scene, a big American wine scene over there.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I do think what's cool about what we're creating with the page is that I do see my main demographics 25 to 45, which is really cool to see. And like, I think that's the most exciting is that, like they're looking for someone to help guide them and help explore new wines and understand a little bit about wine in general. Right. And I think, yeah, and mostly American. So it is
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah. And so, because this is more like a wine industry podcast, let's talk a little bit. Well, this is where I just ask for free advice. So, uh, I'm opening up this wine bar. What are the kind of things that you would suggest to the people who are retailing um, and are making these places? What are the type of thing that you see that would appeal to this demographic that you're obviously reaching on the page?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Congratulations on the wine bar, by the way. That's
this
I
this is this
think
is this is where I just do cheap advertising for my little wine bar in Florida. But
I love it.
but no, it's really interesting, right? Because you and I are a little bit age gapped, and it really ends up with the way I talk ends up appealing to people that look like me, right? And then people who are a little bit younger are watching you, so I just need to know the tricks. That's all.
So yeah, I think one of the big things that my wife and I really look for when we're uh, at hotels, at restaurants, at wineries is hospitality. I think it's huge, and so the places that I gravitate towards the most or go back to, especially winery wise, is the people that made me feel comfortable. So I think that would be such a huge thing is being able to have a 25 or 35-year-old walk into this wine bar not knowing anything and feeling like they can ask questions that the staff aren't going to judge them or like the person next to them will like one of my favorite things I just did in New York was I sat at this nice place called Chimera and sat next to a couple that were about in their late 20s. And, I got a nice bottle and I poured them some, right? And I was
Yep.
like, try this wine. It's really good, right? And that's the mentality I feel like that would be so beneficial is like, like everyone's just warm and welcoming. No one's judging you. And, like a big thing for me is like having serious wine too is huge, but also being approachable. So we were just at a place called Delta in Athens. It's 2-star Michelin, super nice, one of the best meals I've had in a long time. And the Somm was probably my favorite person I met on the trip. He said he was like, I put the DRCs and the first growths on the list to get the serious wine drinkers, right? Like they get them to come in and like show the program. And then his buy the glass program was absolutely wild. He was like, you should try this one. This is a Southern Rhone. This is all these different obscure areas. He's like, I do that. So I can kind of geek out and show people how cool these other wines are. Right. And I think that's really the additional the mentality it should be. It's like you can bring the serious people in, but like let's make it judgment free. Let's try new things. Like I think that would be I would go to that, right?
Yeah.
I'd go to the bar.
The exploratory part where
Hmm.
getting something new in somebody's glass is really kind of the critical step,
Yeah,
is probably a good way to put it.
yeah,
So obviously, you're kind of building towards something. So let's talk a little bit about the future plans of what it is and where you see your page, your brand going.
yeah.
Give a little sneak peek into your brain, because you've obviously done a lot in pretty short amount of time with the page.
Yeah, it is. It is wild to It kind of just started snowballing effect, right? But I want TAC to be more than a wine account, right? Is I think that's the biggest thing. Is I want it to be like a taste platform. With the addition of like the Substack that I just had and just opened, just released not too long ago. I feel like there's a great opportunity to showcase wine, travel, hospitality, just kind of have that, be that guide and be, I want people to trust me and be able to understand this is just my taste, like it's not end all be all, but like I want to be that platform for guidance and, like, um, it's not just coverage, right? It's more a translation of everything that I enjoy and that I think other people would enjoy too. So I think the long term goal is just to really build the room that I want to be in, right? It's
Yeah.
build that room and build that society and community, um, to feel welcoming and non judgment, but also be able to drink awesome wine and go to awesome places. And, I always love, when I get recommendations back to me too, and we do it. We do it on almost every trip. Is someone recommended a place in Dubrovnik, and it was fantastic restaurant, fantastic wine program. I got to try Croatian wines for the first time. That's the community that I want. So building that community, and kind of what you're doing with the wine bar, I think is what I would like to do. Not for wine bar, but I would like to go offline too, right? It's my main thing moving forward in the next 6 months to a year is to start doing more events and dinners and social gatherings and that sort of thing, is make wine more present in the community as well. So
Oh, that's great. And so one thing that we touched on was your kind of wife's involvement in your wine
yeah,
journey, and she travels with you, but she's really involved in what you're doing as well, right?
well, she is. Yeah, we always joke, she's my manager, right? So she like I run pretty much everything by her, and I think I bounce ideas. She gives me ideas all the time. We have conversations. Honestly, most of we call them my little TED talks,
Yeah.
is that were just conversations between her and I. And I'm like, man, this is a good point. We need to talk about this, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just huge. She's such a good support system, and yeah, she's very much a part of it.
Okay. So the takeaway is more exploratory stuff for younger people and to marry well. That's kind of our lesson from today's podcast.
Yeah.
What are you working on that excites you right now? What sort of things that you have on your plate that are just like, this is the fun part of the day?
Yeah. So I think, me, I love traveling. So I'm going to a bunch of fun places. Paso this weekend, going to Napa again. I mean, I'm probably going to Napa a bunch of more times this year, but I think we're going to Willamette, exploring a little bit more there. I think that's going to be really fun. Potentially Burgundy in the future. So I'm excited for that. But I think the main thing that I'm really excited about is building this page, right? Is building the Substack, building allocations, and and I think my main priority that I'm actually so excited for is bringing it offline. The dinners, the events. I think one of the things that really inspired me recently is Domaine de Jacques and their hip hop. They do like hip hop, and they did a big event in LA, and they do Burgundy and Champagne events. And I think that's something that I would love. It really crosses the culture. And so it's very inspiring to me. It's something that I would love to I take inspiration from, right? It's like being able to go offline and have these events and have meet people, young, new generational wine drinkers, and really explore that. So that's where I'm really excited right now.
I really appreciate you doing this. I will tell you that that there is a lot that the wine industry can pick up from the things that you're doing, and I think probably one of the most important points is the one that you just made. There are a handful of brands that kind of understand the crossover into culture, and it's not just a bottled beverage product that we're selling. And
It is culture.
yeah. And so thanks so much for doing this. I really do appreciate
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been great.
it.